Yeah, I would like to call the meeting of the Rules and Regulations Committee to order. And we're going to change the order of the agenda simply because we have one member that's running late, and we'll catch up with her when she gets in here. So we'll skip over the approval of the minutes. And we have one guest in the audience, and I don't think she has any comments, but no comments? Okay. So we've closed the open forum.
Yay, moving right along.
Yeah. And we'll move on to policy 1, which is the definitions. I don't think we have any problem with that one at all. It's already been to the board for the first reading, or is going to the first reading.
Second reading.
Second reading, yeah.
I did make a clerical change that
Okay.
Director McKee had suggested, so that was one change from POA to association, but I don't think that needs a renewed reading because they're synonymous.
Yeah, it was unsubstantive change.
Correct,
to,
yeah. As Steve mentioned, in conjunction with the rest of our policies, that's probably a good change.
That sounds like her.
Sounds like boots.
Okay, let's finish with policy 1. In fact, I think we already have voted to approve that one as
Voted once
okay.
on that.
So we're done.
We'll vote one more time tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon?
But tomorrow night will be the second vote on
Right.
policy 1.0.
Hi, Tia. We just barely started, and we took item 3, the open forum, and dispensed with that, and covered policy 1, the definitions, which is in item A. We'll go back to approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that at all? Any changes? Okay, I have none then, so. We'll go ahead and vote. Favor? Any opposed? Unanimous? In favor? Okay. Policy 102, establishing, changing, and rescinding the policies. Item B. What we're doing today is we're going to put them up here on the board so that we can all hopefully try and stay on the same page, and no pun intended with it. So we can see what changes, and if we've got additional ones that are not included yet, please speak up and say what you feel like. So.
Where it says simple markup, Tom, right above that. Click all. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Aha, there it is.
I love that. We can do that next week.
Yeah.
Okay, there is one thing that I saw earlier, and maybe you've already caught it. And that is further down into it.
It's page 25. Page 25.
Okay, and it starts, I think one of the assumptions that we as a committee had made was that once we change from policies to governing documents, that we would carry that through the rest of the document. And item number 1 under now procedures says notice of intent to change, establish, or rescind any policy. And I suggest that be governing documents. same way in procedure, item A.
Any governing document, so you're making that change, Tom, okay. Any governing document, not plural. Yeah,
And it may be just something that all the way through the document, we can simply change policy to governing documents.
where was the second one? Okay, so 2A, it says there,
It says establish, change, rescind a policy. And if we're dealing with all governance documents,
to establish, change, or rescind, I would say any governing document.
I noticed that too, but I was wondering if there was a reason why it had been left that way, like the last sentence that says bylaws and policies, because we can't change the articles using this process. It would have to be a member vote, right? So I thought maybe I'm getting that backwards, but I thought there was a reason why those were separated.
Well, yeah, the Rules and Regulations Committee is tasked with recommending changes to any governing document, so even if this.
Even if we recommended it.
Yeah, even if the committee decided, oh, we want to change the declaration, technically this committee could recommend that.
Should we add,
Procedure after that would be different. though.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It'd be a very,
should we
Tall order.
add, should we add that recommendation word to the opening sentence then?
it's under the duties, but,
To recommend.
To recommend establishing, changing, minor detail.
No, that's why we're here. To establish a uniform method and responsibility for the control of recommending, establishing, changing, or for the control.
You want to say something like subject to the approval of the board? I mean, method for the responsibility, control, changing, rescinding, subject to the vote of the full board. Does that get weird?
Or members.
Yeah.
I would say that comes after the
But
fact.
the board would make the recommendation to go to the membership with a vote. I mean, nothing goes to the membership for a vote without the board.
First.
So
Mhm.
it has to go through the board.
Well-
I'm not certain on that. Can't the membership call a meeting, a special meeting on their own by signing
Mhm.
Certain amount.
5%?
Get a certain number?
Something
Mhm.
like that?
Yeah.
So, so it's not just the board that can change. You could theoretically have the membership. No?
Yeah, I don't, they have the ability to call a meeting, but that doesn't flow to the ability to make changes to policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I remember reading that.
But I was trying to figure out how to get the word recommend or, recommendation. So maybe you say to establish a uniform method and responsibility for the recommendation of establishing, changing, or rescinding association governing documents.
that might work.
So under the purpose, does that make sense?
Mhm.
To establish a uniform method and responsibility for the
Wait, 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 wait,
recommendation,
Start all over. I was in the wrong spot. Hold on. Go again.
all the way up to the top. So under purpose, to establish a uniform method and responsibility for the recommendation. And then take out control. Yeah.
Wait,
Go ahead.
Do we vote on each one of these as we,
I think we should vote on them to, need a motion and second to recommend
Can you scroll back up again,
changes.
please?
Once we're done with the entire
So-
policy.
The purpose, to establish a uniform method and
Yeah.
responsibility for the recommendation of establishing, changing, rescinding association governing documents.
Meaning not per, we're not going to vote per change, we're going to vote per policy.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I had one
yeah.
other item on the bottom. Are we good with that?
Mhm.
I'm good so far.
Yeah.
The very last sentence, does that one need to be changed to governing
Yeah,
documents?
that was the one that I was thinking of also, is could we, the tool to change or create governing document,
Mm-hmm.
Rather than bylaws.
rather than,
Bylaws or and
Yeah.
then the next one, or
Hold on.
policies.
Before you change that, I would suggest making number 4, because it seems like that there's an ability of the board to go ahead and change bylaws and policies, but it's a whole different procedure to amend the declarations or articles, and just reference them as the guiding, whatever their guiding principles are, 66% vote.
So you want to take the last sentence starting however and make that number 4? You split the last sentence off from that?
Well, it still has that word bylaws in there. In resolutions, my understanding, those are different in any event. That's another guideline.
That's a suggestion. Resolutions are just suggestions, is that pretty much?
I understand them as proof of a change.
So,
To-
yeah, this is
for-
talking about the ability of the board. It's basically saying we're not, under this policy, we're not giving the board the right to make changes to policies or bylaws through resolutions.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, resolutions.
Yeah, I agree.
So
it's
it's,
narrow through resolutions.
so it's.
Narrows are totally different. So I mean, in my opinion, number 3 is fine as it is.
Yes, I agree
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
But,
Fine as it not change,
yeah,
not
Correct.
changing what I had recommended.
Mhm.
yeah, a resolution is something different.
And it's-
Yeah, that's just.
But as far as a guideline, so this committee can recommend changes or what have you, and then the board goes ahead and makes those changes based on what we suggest.
Mhm.
But in my opinion, it's a totally different thing to refer to the declarations and the articles. The board can't do that based on what we recommend. So I would just suggest adding a 4th clause in there under the guidelines.
I'm not sure I follow you.
I think that's what I was saying earlier, is that the declarations are different because it
Yeah.
does take member involvement. So, and he explained to me that the reason that is okay, that it doesn't have to be called out in here, is because the initial process is still the same. This is all still the same, it's just what happens after this. This policy doesn't refer to the member vote, it refers to how it begins with the board.
Well, 1 and 2 refer to making those changes. 1 and 2 is the notice of an intent for 2, which is another issue.
Yeah.
I don't really see a whole lot of difference between whether we recommend something on any of the governance documents. We make a recommendation to the board, and then, let's say it is something with the declarations, the board doesn't have the power to change that, but they have the power to recommend that we go for a vote of the public or the members. So I see it all okay the way it is, but
I mean, I see that it says, after the 2 meetings, it's like the one going on with the association, we've made recommendations, we've voted on it, we've approved it. I just feel like that we can say, hey, we want to add or change Declaration 1, and we could vote on it, but that's not the procedure. I just see them as 2 different things.
I get that, because number 2 does sound like it's saying we can, well, that's just renumbering and reorganizing.
Yeah, what I had added there was we can we can establish, change, or rescind policies, true. We can do that with bylaws, true. But we can't do that,
When you say "we," you mean the board?
The board.
Not this committee?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The board. So we talk about it, and then we take it to the board, and then the board, takes a vote and says, yeah, we're going to change the word association or the POA, and we'll do those things over 2 meetings. But that's not how it works with changing the declarations or the articles, I don't believe. I know the articles have been changed a couple of times, and I don't know the
Right.
procedure, and that may be another.
Number 2 states after board approval. Okay, the board's not going
Yeah.
to approve a change in the declarations, because they can't. Or if they do, it won't
Yeah,
be
see,
legal.
I think.
I agree.
I think that, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to take your job. The governing documents have to be looked at in their entirety, not in their individuality. And so, if you look at it in their entirety, and you would start with the declaration, and the declaration clearly states what the procedure is to change the declaration. So if you go all the way down, and the policy is, you have the declaration, bylaws, policies, and the policy is a third in order, so it can't supersede number 1 in order. And so, you could take out an individual section that, I think it's maybe being redundant, but also it's just, you have to look at the governing documents in their totality.
Sure.
Basically, we
I
don't need
think-
to restate what's already stated.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's true. If someone that didn't have a full grasp of how the governing documents work in their order of priority, and they were to look at this, they could be misunderstood. But if they asked a lawyer or asked someone informed, they would go, no, you gotta start at the top and go all the way down, and this corrects everything, so.
Federal and state.
So I don't see any harm in adding a 4th position to referring just specifically to the declarations and articles. But to just say that we can change or rescind
So
anything
what would number
by a
4
vote,
say?
just something to the effect that to amend, so number 2A would just refer to and probably even 2.1 would just refer to policies and bylaws, that those things can be changed by a majority of the board. But what can't be changed, so a number 4 would be to amend declarations or the articles, the board would follow the requirements listed in those documents.
Isn't that kind of redundant? Because we already have to do it that way. You just want to state it again?
Within this policy is authorizing this committee, or the R&R committee, to then make changes, recommendations to the board.
Recommendations,
And then the board's, who knows? Then it just says, okay, whatever we recommended, the majority passes it. But that's not how the governing documents say. With governing documents, it's different. So this committee basically has the authority to recommend changes to bylaws and policies. We don't necessarily, and we can probably make that same argument to the board, but to pass it, it just says, okay, that's passed by the majority of the board. But that's not the case with the declarations and articles. And maybe it is with the articles, but not
articles it is,
not
yeah.
the declarations.
So this committee can make recommendations on any of those governing documents,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And then the board has to pass by a majority vote,
right.
pass changes to the articles, the bylaws, or the policies, those 3.
Yeah,
So, and as you stated, the declaration is a totally different process.
yeah, and I would just specify it. That's what it is. It's not going to be changes to the declarations don't happen because of a majority of the board. And I would just spell it out. I don't think there's any harm in spelling it out, and I can see
But
how.
it can't happen that way anyway. I mean,
Okay,
once it goes
okay,
from here, it goes to
I
the
think-
board, and then,
You know, we don't want to continue just back and forth and back and forth,
Yeah.
basically saying the same things over and over again. So we got two choices. One, we can make a motion to accept it as it's been changed up here. We can table it, which I do not recommend doing. I think we need to pass some things and get moving down the line. So, choice of the committee.
I will make a motion to accept 1.02 as it is right there with the blue and the red.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to second that?
I think I can second it. I will.
Okay.
So, now we have further discussion before we take a vote on it.
Just one comment. Would you be happy, or do you think it would cover all of the different things if we just do away with changing governing documents and changing it to policies, bylaws, and articles?
Sure,
I mean, that's the contingency.
that's the
right?
point. Yeah.
Isn't the articles a supermajority?
Yeah, it's 6 of 9. It doesn't,
Where are you
We just don't
recommending
wanna-
make that change?
Anywhere it
by
says
a
governing
majority of the
documents.
board.
On the document, where do you,
Anywhere that it says governing documents, change it to whatever is allowed by majority vote.
No,
of the board.
I don't agree with that, because the Rules and Regulations Committee has, unless we want to change all of this, has the authority to look at rules, regulations, policies, all of the governing documents.
Yeah.
Okay, and if we take out and we just limit it down to some, naturally, it would make a job a lot easier, but I don't think it serves the board correctly in doing so.
In 16, the board voted to try to change the declaration, and it was on the ballot, on the new director ballot in 16. It failed, but the board took the appropriate steps to try and change the governing documents and had it on the ballot, and it failed. So,
That strengthens my point, is that we don't have the authority to do that, to make,
no, what I'm saying is they did vote on it. They pushed it forward in the correct manner, and it was on the ballot.
Takes
So,
66 or 75%.
66.
so then it would be. so that would-
66% of 38,000.
so maybe under 2A, you say, to establish, change, or rescind.
Yeah, we could just change that. I mean, we can talk about the declarations all day long,
Mm-hmm.
and just like,
Well, I was thinking to establish, change, or rescind bylaws or policies after notice has been made and passed by a majority of the board.
yeah, it's that,
And
it's,
then the second one, to establish or change articles by a supermajority of the board. And then, so then you'd have a D, right?
Yep. I see where you're going.
And it changes it to the declaration as described in the declaration or something like that.
Doesn't governing documents, the overall umbrella, and all those other things fall below it? Governing
It
documents
does,
is policies.
but like here, if we're saying to establish, change, or rescind any governing document by a majority of the board, that's
Is
not correct.
Technically wrong, yeah.
so we could, I mean, we could just delete that phrase also, and just say,
Yeah, a motion shall be made at 2 consecutive board meetings and voted upon by the board.
yeah, so that's how you establish it or change it or rescind it. You make your
Mhm.
motion, I guess, and then. but it's definitely.
I like that better.
So one way or the other.
I like
in
that
my-
better where you're saying to establish, change, or rescind. But do you say any governing document, though?
I liked where you were going with that, having a C and
Mhm.
D that just specifically called, it's the procedure. Here's the different
Mhm.
procedures for
It's
all the
under the
different ways.
procedure.
It's where it needs to say it, it's how it needs to say it, because it lines out, if someone goes to read this, you don't have to know everything that goes above it and before it. Right there, it'll say, this is how you change policies and bylaws, this is how you change articles. It
Are
would
you
just-
guys
it would
okay
just
with
list
me
it.
drafting something up and
Right
sending
now,
it to the,
Okay, go ahead.
I know you're wanting to.
Can I withdraw my motion?
You can, or we can table it.
No, I'll withdraw my motion to approve it because we're about to change it.
Okay,
So I'll withdraw that motion.
I'll withdraw the second.
That was quick.
Okay, what are we going to write in there? Either that or a motion to table, one of the two.
I would- You want time to spell it out, Doug? I mean, it's up to you.
Do you want to be the scribe?
Fire away.
To establish, change, or rescind bylaws or policies.
I can't do it that fast.
At the A, he's on A.
Oh, you,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Where are we at? in
2A.
purpose?
You're just
Yeah,
gonna
under
retype that
procedure.
same one 5 times, Tom. Just go back.
Mhm. Yeah, just leave it there. So under 2A,
Okay,
2A, to establish, change, or rescind bylaws or policies. After notice by agenda has been made, a motion shall be made at 2 consecutive board meetings and passed by a majority of the board. So that is a correct statement. And then make a new B, so that current B will end up being like C or D.
could you make a B part of A?
A, yeah,
Well,
because it's only referring to bylaws and policies.
Mhm.
yeah.
that's fine.
All right.
Well, you're gonna have a B. We're laughing at his typing skills up here behind you.
I'm not
Uh,
laughing,
I wouldn't have never had to do that.
I'm not laughing.
To establish, change, or rescind
I have empathy.
articles
3,
of incorporation. After notice by agenda has been made.
The whole thing,
Yeah,
okay. Do you want to include, we can't do the emergency, though.
correct.
All right. Should articles of incorporation, are those capitalized? Because it's a specific articles.
Yeah. And passed by a supermajority of the board.
Does the one notice and vote apply to that one too?
Is it super or, no?
6 out of 9.
It's 6 out of 9?
Mm-hmm.
That's a super. I'm sorry, what were you
Two-thirds.
saying?
2/3.
Does B apply to the new B? Does the old B apply to the new B?
Well, it's gonna look like that.
I know, I'm wondering if that does apply to articles of incorporation too, though. If it's an emergency, can there be one notice?
I can't imagine. Is there a scenario, Doug, where you might see that, where it would be,
I can't imagine an emergency.
Yeah, I don't believe so. It doesn't talk about an emergency in the articles, though. So it's kind of an open question. Just going back to the original ones, all these amendments.
Declarations.
You want to go with the declaration next? Okay. Oh, shoot. Hold on, hold, yeah. Give me a second.
It doesn't call it out in the articles, you know, two readings, but I think we would likely follow the same policy with those as we would the other bylaws and articles.
You know, that sort of brings up another question. The membership must vote on it. Does the board have to also agree
Mm-hmm.
to the declaration change?
Mm-hmm. So,
Is this okay?
Like the
no, that's
assessment.
not right.
Great.
Well,
Just like
hang
the
on.
assessment.
So I think that C, you're probably just talking about a recommendation because it has to be voted on by the membership. So there's no, oh, there you go. Okay, I'm sorry. I see it there. Passed by the membership.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay at the end?
Yeah, just take out that. Yeah, so to establish, change, or rescind the declaration after notice by agenda has been, a motion shall be made at 2 consecutive board meetings and passed by the membership in accordance with the declaration.
Or procedure outlined in the declaration?
That's better. Missing a D on outlined.
What are you taking down?
Passed by a majority, passed by a supermajority, and then passed by the membership.
You're better than me. I'd be taking a picture of it.
Okay, I like that. If everybody else likes that, what Tom's written up there.
I do.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, I hate to ask this, is there any more discussion?
Not on that one.
Okay, not hearing any. Carmen, get it? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed?
Hey, Jerry, we accomplished
Yeah.
something. Very good. All right.
One down.
Okay. Oh. 103.5. 103.5.
Yep.
Okay. What I was going to do was ask for a motion to accept it as it is, and so we could get into discussion, but based on the last one, I'm going to ask for some discussion first. We know what we're talking about, so go ahead, Steve.
Just a quick one, so to speak, not really. About the will of the membership,
The will of the association.
will of the
Yeah.
association. Is that a little,
Yeah. You can talk about it.
Which one?
I would suggest
Under
just
purpose.
striking it.
Under purpose, where it
I
says
mean-
the will of the association,
Mhm.
which
Kept in good
legally
order,
the
period?
association is the membership, so, but
Just put a period after kept in good order? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that would be one, yes. and delete the "and reflect the will of the association." You know,
It could be
Hopefully that's implied.
misconstrued that, yeah.
as long as we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't,
Comment before we move on with that. Does that then necessarily mean that it's the board's responsibility to reflect the will of the association?
I mean, you know, it's a very philosophical question, exactly what it is that any organization does. You know, we have our governing documents, and that's, in my opinion, what I think we try to follow. If the majority, you know, and even in the majority, 66%, if they say, oh, POA, go away, I mean, it takes not 51, but 66 affirmative. So I would strike I mean, we follow the rules.
Comments from anybody else on that? Okay, what's your next one?
This is just a minor one, just the number 1, 2, 1. I would just add the word "to," be guided, just to make it consistent with everybody, with all the rest of them. Just again, maybe a minor thing, update or amend, which is number 3, 2, 3. To originate designed to update or, you know, I don't know. Again, technical thing, probably no big deal. Update or amend.
Pretty much means the same thing, doesn't it?
Well, that's, yeah, but as long as we're doing it.
Should we not, in number 1, change policies to governance documents?
Oh, good catch.
Yeah, good catch.
Which essentially, we're kind of almost redundant, but
Policies are part of the governing documents. So that'd be
Governing
like-
documents.
Any problem with that, Doug?
No,
Okay.
that's good. I would take out et cetera too, because governing documents covers.
Yeah.
There's no et cetera.
okay.
Et cetera.
Is anything else? Anybody?
So on number 5, I think we talked about that, right? And then number 6.
Most of the red comes from previous rules meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And then where it says make it available, is that to everybody? Which is fine.
My opinion, yes.
I mean, I agree.
Anybody that asked for it.
Yeah, it says association's website.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we have to give them a hard copy. We can just direct them to where it's at. And
Did you have
And then
any changes?
pardon?
Did you have any changes? Any
No.
suggested changes?
Can we shorten number 2-2? Just period
2-2.
at governing documents?
Just put a period instead of the comma.
Mm-hmm.
Are
Is
you
there a
Maybe
saying-
sense that the, sorry,
I'll just say making it consistent.
yeah. Is there a sense that the board member manual is part of the regulatory documents?
Um,
I think it, it is, or certainly tries to be.
Yeah, I think it would fall within the definition of governing documents.
I would say so.
So I think you could make that a period there.
And then on number 6, where it says the policy manual, is that the same thing, that it's the governing documents manual? Is that binder that we received? Is that what's being referred to there?
The policy manual is all the policies, the 1.00 through 10.01. That's the policy manual. Then the board member manual is part of what you get as a new board member.
I think what you're saying really would be correct. I mean, it's already covered above that.
Yeah, it seems redundant, at number 6
because it's-
completely.
Number 6 is just basically pointing it out more, but it is redundant. I
guess what-
don't have any.
We wanted to add who maintained
Yeah,
it,
that
though,
was
the
the-
corporate secretary
That
part.
was-
That was the
Yeah,
intent of the comments from last
Yeah, the
time.
comment was this committee doesn't do it. We throw it
Mhm.
on poor Tammy. Poor Tammy.
Yeah, no.
So on number 5 and 6, is the whole thing redundant? We just need who's going to maintain this?
We could change them all to one, stating that the corporate secretary,
Does
but
those-
we do have to have something in there. 'Cause
yeah.
the current regulation says the committee will maintain it all.
Is that on there somewhere?
It used to say that the Rules and Regulations Committee maintained it. And this is a change to having somebody else maintain.
Yeah, so if we
see.
combine 5 and 6, just to say the corporate secretary shall maintain a copy of the current governing documents and shall make them available upon request.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Absolutely.
good, very
A
good.
copy of the governing documents will also be made available on the association's website. A copy of all current governing documents will be made available.
So every time we run
Perfect.
into policy manual, we're gonna change it to governing documents.
Not necessarily.
Depends.
Not if it's just talking about
Yeah,
that one.
it depends.
Okay,
Depends on what
Yeah.
the context is, yeah.
okay.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Motion?
Everybody is except Tom and Tammy. I thought we were just combining the two.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep, mm-hmm. That'll be number 5.
Perfect.
Another minor point
Shall
on
make them.
number 4, should directors be singular?
Shall make it, should be, shall make them available upon request. First sentence on number 5.
You all right?
Sorry, Steve.
And in number 4, make directors singular.
Them available, good. Yeah.
Like it, like it.
What did I say?
You waiting for a motion, Jerry?
Should we,
Uh,
well, after the last comma, I mean, that's redundant also.
Yeah.
Oh,
Copy of the current governing documents. Last sentence, a copy of the current, yeah.
In my head, I'm thinking that, do we have a problem if we simply say director or board of director? And the reason why I'm kind of toying with that is a little bit, within the POA, we have other people other than the board of directors that are also called directors.
Hmm.
And I don't think we're meeting, as an example, director of golf or director of recreation in this case.
Can we just define that word director in the, up at the beginning?
It already is, yeah.
What is?
Yeah. So director is defined in the definitions already as someone, a member of the board of directors.
Is that interchangeable with members? Because 1-1 says at least 3 members to the committee each June.
Where are you at?
On 1-1, the board chairperson will appoint at least 3 members to the committee each June.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
What,
1-1.
on 1-1?
103.5.
Sorry, on the policy we were on.
Sorry.
Oh,
1-1.
103.
Yeah, that's a little.
103.5. No, 103.5.
103.5.
And then section 1, Roman numeral 1, number 1.
I must have closed it out.
Under
Good
organization
catch.
and appointment.
Yeah.
3
and what-
directors.
What,
The idea is to say the board chairperson will appoint at least 3 directors,
oh,
capital directors instead of members.
Yeah.
It's a good catch.
Do we need to, I hate to do this, do we need to clarify the second sentence too? The chief operating officer is an ex officio member of the committee?
Could do that.
Do you want the
'Cause-
committee capitalized or not capitalized? Because down here it's not capitalized.
Yeah, not.
Okay.
as the way it reads, it possibly could mean that the committee could elect Tammy as the chair, as an example.
Yeah.
Go with it.
Will the changes that you're making show up in the red again?
Yeah, I
If you
just
just switch it back and forth?
It's, to type it in, it's just easier to
Just
type it
easier.
in this way than when the marks are all in there. But when we vote on it, when the board votes on it, we'll include
Okay.
this way.
Good.
It's just, I'm finding typing it in is a lot easier the other way. It's just trying to get the right spacing and everything when you're,
Got
are you
it.
deleting?
Okay, motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. I need to repeat them for you? We were just talking about when she sits over there, sometimes she can't figure out who it is that's making the motion, so. Okay, is there any further discussion? Those in favor, aye. Raise your hand. Opposed? Unanimous. Pass. Got 2 down.
2 down.
They'll go faster as we get hungrier. Is the next one 2.02?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's begin discussions on that. Any comments?
Is it reservation and fee policy of amenities? Again, another, because we're not really talking fee policy, I don't guess, so that's all I got right now.
Carmen, please, if you have any comments, please say so.
So it's reservation of reservation of and fee policy of amenities. Is there, do guests rent our amenities?
This is the one.
Yeah,
Yep. This is the one.
This one was
Aren't we
up,
on 202?
yeah, this one was updated at the 11th hour by myself, so you'll have to look at the one on the screen, because David brought up a point about that issue. Guests reserving, like Lake Point, for special events and that sort of thing. So I tried to use that comment to define kind of another category. And it actually uses the same language that is used in policy, or similar language that is used in policy 3.04.
Should we skip to that first? Because I have some comments also on that.
That's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's up to you. I'm not sure what.
What do you think, Jerry?
What you'd prefer to cover first. Maybe take a minute to read what I've drafted here on number 4. So,
Red.
yeah, so if you scroll up. So I've added the word participant guests. Before, it used to just say to provide for the manner in which association amenities are rented by members and guests. That's what it used to read. But then I added this category called participant guests, which I'm trying to define as people who like wedding events and those types of things. So then I defined participant guests later on in the policy under is it 3 or 4? Can you scroll down just a little bit? Yeah, 2, Roman numeral 2, part 4. Define what special guests or participant guests are.
I would suggest that we look at policy 304, and I agree about redefining, what's going on. I like the idea of participant guest. And I added, I think you did too, on policy 304, I suggest that we've got, and I think I brought this up in an email also, is that we've got members, and then we got guests of members, and then we have what I would term visitors, which are sponsored by the POA.
Participant guests.
Yeah, and I would,
Means visitor, yeah.
instead of using that, I would just, because it'll also fit better on the fee schedule, as a visitor or a guest or a member, and then define out all those terms. So it probably ends up being the same thing, but I think on the fee schedule thing, it says as a non-member, and you have to be a guest or a visitor or a participant guest or something, or a reciprocal guest.
We're kind of going back and forth between 202 and 304. Oh, you got it there.
I got them both up.
Okay.
So it may be easier to define them first and then talk about the situation. Because that's where it is going, but who's the sponsor, who's the member, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason the word participant guest was used, forever ago when this was written?
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I think, in this sense, it was just for like people who are golfing in those types of events.
Yeah.
Fundraiser events.
Yeah, if we have a better term.
I like
Um,
it because it kind of gives me a picture in my head, even just saying it. I mean, visitor can be anything, but participant guest means, to me, you're here
You're
to do
engaged in
something
some kind of
specific.
activity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Got a specific reason for being.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I do know I've had several comments made to me where when they talk about, say, regular guest, well, I go 3 times a week, so I'm a regular guest.
Regular.
You know,
Mhm.
So we may need to change regular guest to something.
That's the one
Right.
that confuses me.
Right, I tried to also just simplify it. We have guests who are sponsored or who are guests of a member. And then we have visitors, and they're basically sponsored by the association. And typically, it's those visitors, or it could be members and guests also, but typically it'd be like if a visitor wanted to rent Lake Point, and we would permit that.
Mhm.
But the
Okay.
POA, isn't the POA still sponsoring that? Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's sort of, I know it's semantics, but to me, you got guests, you got visitors, and then you've got your reciprocal guest would be the only, the Cooper thing.
Can you come up with a different name, but visitors? I'm not crazy about the designation visitors. It just,
I have a
participant
suggestion.
guest, I like, guest of members. Visitors just,
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of makes me feel creepy.
My suggestion is A on
don't like that
3.04. A
That's
should
silly.
be sponsored guest.
Where are you at?
3.04 2A. That should be sponsored guest,
That could be.
then reciprocal guest, and
Instead of
then,
regular guests?
yeah. And that's the same thing as member is giving you your guest pass. You're
Yes, I-
sponsored.
I like
There you
that.
go.
Reciprocal and participant. To me, it covers all three. There's not another example I could think of that someone wouldn't fall into one of those three.
So a sponsored guest, a reciprocal guest, or a participant guest.
Mhm.
Okay, now we're talking 3.04, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
You're
Yeah,
right.
I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page before I start typing.
Yeah.
Hurry and type it so I can tell you to delete it and change it. Have another idea. No, I'm
And
just
then- and
kidding.
then not tell me where
Yeah.
you are when you want another change. Let me try and unpick it.
Does that make sense?
So there's basically 3 categories of guests.
Participants, Sponsored, and
Reciprocal.
Sponsored, reciprocal, participant.
pretty well covers it.
So going back to that
Do you want me?
fee
the
schedule,
authorization to
can we
sponsor?
do something there?
Sponsor guests? Do we have to have it, probably looks better just
Not right now.
to sponsor guests.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, by virtue of, all right.
Used by
Um,
sponsor.
Before you,
Well, that doesn't really
can I make a
sense.
comment before you start changing all of that, please? In my opinion, we now have those 3 categories. And then in the next section 2, if you could scroll down, please. That's, to me, where this next conversation should be placed is, okay, what does that mean? If you're a sponsored guest, what does that mean? If you're a reciprocal guest, what does it mean? And if you're a participant guest, what does that mean? And I think that's where you say, okay, if you're a sponsored guest, you have access to all the amenities. But if you're a
That's
Partic-
quite true, though, either. 'Cause in some cases, you have to be with a member.
Or have the
True.
card.
True,
What if we
but
use
w-
the terminology that is on the fee schedule and the 2020 plan, where on that it says non-member?
yeah, we can change.
Non-member guest? that way we're trying to link those documents together.
Yeah, I don't like the word non-member, because you got to be a guest. You either got to be a member or you got to be a guest. So on that, you know, where it says guest, you would just add the word, what'd you say?
Sponsored.
Sponsored guest. And then in the other section, for tennis, for example, it would be participant guest,
Would,
or any guest, something like that.
Okay,
Would it be easier to just
We're getting off
go
track.
at the bottom and say there are 3 classes of guests, and then instead of guests and non-members, you just say guests? And
Whatever would be the clearest.
Do we really have to have any clarification of why do we have 3 guests? We have member and non-member.
And
If we move back a second, we only have 2 classes of people. We have member and non-member.
Well, that's what we're saying. There's actually 3.
They would be a non-member.
No. They're reciprocal. They get member rates.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, but technically, they're not a member. They get member rates, but they're
but
not a member.
Cooper doesn't have to do it that
Technically,
way.
they're a member.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So all I would suggest is, right, so in section 1, we come up with some sort of terms, which it sounds like we have, a sponsored guest, a reciprocal guest, or a participant guest, which would be for the golf tournaments, fishing tournaments, Lake Point, for example. And then in the next section, actually define who has access. So, you know, participant guests would be able to use the restaurants, golf, tennis, the 3 parks, the restaurants. Sure. So,
Carmen, did I misspeak when I said that reciprocal guests get member rates?
That's correct.
They do.
yeah.
Okay, when I go to Hot Springs Village, I don't get their rate. I get a reciprocal rate, which is halfway between their rate and non-member rate.
My understanding was you get the member rate of where you're at. If you go to Hot Springs Village, you should get the Hot Springs Village member rate.
Well, that'd be nice, but I don't think it works that way.
It sounds like you need to see that agreement.
Yeah,
Shouldn't there be
it's
full
$30
agreement?
off. It's okay.
It-
I'm not griping about it. I
It
just
says
didn't
that we will reciprocate with them, but
Yeah.
not necessarily they reciprocate with us.
wanna- Yeah, I'm just worried about what,
Yeah.
making sure we know how we
Reciprocal,
handle it
that's
here.
easy. Participant is in an event. That's easy. But the sponsored, those were sponsored guests of members of the association by virtue. So
Yeah, it's not the right
this
section.
clarifies that as a sponsored guest of the association, they can use all the things that are open. Okay, but where is the one that talks about just a guest of a regular member?
Right there.
that's the
2A.
sponsored guest.
2A is a sponsored guest of a member. You're a member, and the association is a member.
In my view, I think that the membership card, which goes back to those definitions, the only entities that can get a membership card is either an individual or a corporation. And in this case, the POA falls under the corporate rules. And so, in my opinion, that's where that, after those who are sponsored guests of a member, period. And then you take the following stuff and you put it under number C. Or you just leave it out, but add it somewhere else. Let's see.
Okay, good. Let me jump in.
Okay.
Okay, so sponsored guests includes the use of all these things. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What if you're a guest of a member, my guest, and I want to take them to the lake, which is not open to a sponsored guest, but is open to a guest of a member. So don't we have to have 4 categories?
It kind of seems like A and C are the same thing.
Well, C is different because
They can use lake.
they can use the lake. So the Lakes Committee said that they voted last month, or earlier this month, that whenever they voted, they voted that we could have the kayak demo day, and that will include non-members. And so that's where they're a participant guest. So they're coming in for a specifically sanctioned event that's on the lakes. But other than a specifically sanctioned event, a non-member cannot use the lakes unless they are a guest.
Correct.
That's why I think we have to have 4 categories.
Yeah.
The way I did it was to put that phrase you've mostly got is under policy 303, back under the membership cards. So members who own property can get a
3.03.
3.03. So members can get a principal membership card, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's corporate owned, which is basically the POA. And that's where we can sponsor guests as well. So back to your point, the POA is able to sponsor regular guests under the terms of the 303-2 corporate owned card. And that, in my opinion, is where it all needs to be spelled out. So with regard to lots owned by the association that are otherwise subject to the declarations, we will not cast the lots in vote of elections. We won't cast them in assessment initiatives or anything else. However, the POA can sponsor, I wrote down visitors again, but participant guests at these following amenities. So the membership card is either a member or is a person or a corporation. And since the POA is a corporation, yes, that's where I think it should go. And then back to policy 304, basically the POA is able to sponsor regular guests.
So it sounds like
But
we have
it's
4.
restricted, we're restricted on those specific amenities. And then I would outline in both places what they can and cannot do.
Yeah, I hear you. It seems like section 1 is defining the 4 different types. And we have one that sounds like it needs to be added. Sponsored guest needs to be completely separate. Regular guest needs to change to corporate guest. So we'd have corporate guest, sponsored guest, reciprocal, and participant.
We could do it that way, yeah.
Corporate guests, we do have lots owned by corporations who give the membership rights, they assign them to an officer of their corporation. So we're not the only corporation.
Right.
Association guest.
It's still the corporation,
It's corporate, but corporation is not only the POA.
right.
So yeah, maybe wrong word. So association guest,
Yeah, that would be better.
sponsored guest, reciprocal, and participant.
I could go for that.
And then in section 2, we're gonna have to list what those have access to.
All right, let me,
Yeah, I think I
So it
like
is
that better.
it is a separate category then. It would nearly have to be.
Corporate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you have this,
Corporate, or you just want
As far as I know,
association?
corporation retains the voting rights.
Association,
Yes.
because if
Yeah.
a corporation in that situation, they're gonna follow
Carmen
one of the
says I'm
four.
right.
Right. I mean, we just have to spell it out.
Yeah, I
like we
think
have,
association
about what the
guest.
Okay, let me
PO
take a stab. at it.
can do or can't do with it.
because you're right, the
Should we go
sponsored
all the way
guest has
back to the
access to more than
definitions?
just what's listed there
Add
under,
those so
under
that we don't
A.
have to define them every time.
Yeah.
No, we're not gonna let her do it.
I mean, it saves a lot of ink.
Yeah, it's not just,
We're all not saving ink, right?
but association guests are limited to those things under
Yes.
A.
That's clearer spelled out that way.
Mhm.
You like that?
Association guest.
Oh,
We're adding
absolutely.
another one, but it makes sense.
We can make Carmen's life easier, we should do that.
I mean, it's definitely a big issue.
Yeah.
That's right, it's called.
It makes sense that we're gonna have to add these sections and add them to the access, because all of that's changed.
Yeah.
It's all new territory.
To be fair, there aren't very many who consider it an issue, but those who do think it's big.
Am I right or am I wrong? They think it's a big deal.
I always learn to say you may be right.
There you go. I'll check on that.
Should that go under definitions rather than here? Or in both places?
I think it's a good idea to have it here, that way it's clear. Sponsors are allowed to use all of the, is that correct? If I use the word all, am I,
Are you including lakes?
they're
You
a
have-
sponsored guest?
They'd have to be
Tom,
accompanied.
you, in section 2 it spells out access to association amenities. I would use number 1 as the
Just
definition
defining.
of guests,
Mhm.
and then number 2 as what it is that each person or group.
Got it, okay. But you agree that on 2B, we include the limiting areas.
I still
mean, I
think that
wouldn't.
falls to the second area, because it's specifically titled access to association amenities. That's where we discuss access per guest definition.
Should
Got
say,
it.
instead of include, should we say limited to?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's,
But you're gonna put that down in
Yeah, I'd cut and paste.
Roman 2.
Okay.
So Roman 1, 2B is just gonna say those who are, quote, association guests.
Didn't we change that, or suggest that change?
Say it again.
Participant guests. No. You were talking about a 4th category.
Yeah, we'll still have reciprocal and participant as they're written, and then association and sponsor would be the other two.
So association guest.
Okay, access to the guest.
So that first one would be sponsored guests may,
And you could do here the same thing that you just did up above and have categories, members have access to everything. Sponsored guests have access, I guess, to everything. Participant guests have access to everything. Is that true? No, that's restricted to invite only. And then the association guest is limited to these 6 things, whatever it is.
Now, there are still guest fees for, like, if you're my guest and you want to go to the lake and I can't go with you, you're going to pay a fee to be by yourself with your guest card.
Still gonna pay a fee even being with you. We still have to pay a guest fee.
Yep.
Not if the member is
Not-
with.
Yeah, not if the member's with the guest. They don't
And-
have to pay a fee. If you go out on your own and you're my guest, then you pay a fee. But if you're with me and I've got my activity card, it doesn't cost you anything.
That gets you free, not me.
You too. I mean, that's the way it's been.
I've never understood it that way. Then what are guest fees for?
As if
you
they
wanna
wanna
go
go
out there by
alone.
yourself and I can't go with you, I'm sponsoring you, but I'm not gonna be with you, then you pay a fee.
I have never known that.
Come to member services, we'll tell you these things.
No, I assumed if you're a guest alone or accompanying, you still paid a guest fee.
Mm-mm. Not if you're
It's a
with
little
member.
inconsistent, because,
Like,
You know,
I make my
if I
family
have
pay
a-
when I go with them. I tell them they have to pay the guest fee. You're still a
I
guest. You
could-
just get
I
to go
could-
because you're with me.
I could include reciprocal guests in with sponsored guests, correct?
I would leave them, I would put them separate, just to keep them, make it consistent.
Okay. Just because you want to be that way.
Okay, can I make a suggestion here that not necessarily table it, but allow, say, a few days, even all of next week, for Tom, Doug, anybody else to make further suggestions, come up with a plan, and we send that out by email, which I hate doing that way, but because we've got, what, 2-3 weeks before it has to come up, 2 weeks before it comes up before a GM meeting. Because otherwise, we're probably going to be here a lot longer yet, trying to iron out the exact wording.
I think we're on the right track with it, about the definitions and the limits. So,
Can I just,
good idea.
can I just, what's that?
It's either the animal shelter or the foundation.
Oh, has a meeting in here at 6?
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Oh.
Okay.
And they have their event tonight too. The restaurant. Great.
Let's go to your office. Sit on the floor.
I can do that. I have a computer, I have a wall-mounted computer there too.
I was joking, but I'm absolutely up for that.
I have a wall-mounted monitor in my office
4,
if we need to.
5, 6, so we need 4 more chairs. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
What
I'll
more
just
do we
take
have
this
here?
one.
Besides these two, which we seem to be on the same track. I guess we sort of golf cart.
Golf cart registration, unless you have some other changes for that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, we can't move to my office because we can't film it,
All right.
record it.
Get your phone out. Go Facebook Live.
Do what?
We could relocate to my office, but we can't record it like it's being recorded right now.
Why, is there another use on this building or this room?
Yeah, evidently the
Animal shelter.
Animal shelter is in here at 6.
Hmm. Probably, well, the other option is to adjourn. I mean, we've already been, what, an hour and a half?
So I'll see y'all Saturday morning.
So we can work on the ones that we've gotten some direction from you guys on. And,
Pick it up the next time with those.
yeah, pick it up the next time. And then, because to call another meeting, we need to provide notice to the public and that sort of thing. So I would suggest adjourning. We work on what we have so far, our marching orders, Jerry. And then we schedule another R&R meeting at your convenience.
I move to adjourn.
I guess we can do that without David.
Yeah, there's still enough.
I mean, we could adjourn the meeting and go do field work in my office and get the language correct, and then at the next meeting,
Present all those changes.
present all the changes.
Okay.
We still need to adjourn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still need to adjourn. All in,
We need a second.
Too many side conversations.
yeah.
Second.
Okay, favor adjourning? We're adjourned.
All right.